Hello, and welcome back for another Steelers Week in Review with myself, Jacob Klinger, your PennLive Steelers beat reporter. Now, this week, most of the Steelers news came out of the NFL owners' meetings in Phoenix. We were not there, some other reporters were. I encourage you to check out their work. I will just give you the briefest of summaries of some of the items that came out of Arizona while we talk about some of the other things swirling around the world that is the Steelers in 2017. Mike Tomlin opened the door, or rather left the door open, answered the door. He had some proverbial interaction with the door, if you will, in regard to the subject of the Steelers drafting a quarterback this year. And he said in so many words that, he reiterated what he has before. I said before, insofar as that, the Steelers scout the whole draft class every year, but he sort of narrowed his perspective in saying that the Steelers have been preparing to draft a quarterback for a while. And Kevin Colbert, the general manager, told us and other reporters back in February that the Steelers do need to bring in a young quarterback to be the quarterback after Ben Roethlisberger. It's just a matter of when. Now, what Mike Tomlin said in Phoenix was that, why not this year? I think his words were, who's to say it's not this year, as he told ESPN and I believe others. And to a certain extent, that makes a pretty real amount of sense, because there's this notion that there are no first round, day one, year one quarterbacks in this draft. But there are a bunch of interesting ones. And the fact of the matter is NFL teams have just repeatedly struggled to say no to quarterbacks, however good they may be. If they're there in the draft and they're rated better than the other ones and they think they need one, and frankly, a lot of teams do, they'll go and take a quarterback. So the Steelers drafting 30th overall and so on, and having 8 picks and an extra third round pick for the compensatory pick, it could make sense for the Steelers to take a quarterback. It's also just really tricky to track because it's very double-edged. Maybe it's a thin class, but you could also see a run sort of developing on quarterbacks. Because there are enough options out there that are interesting. You look at a guy like Nathan Peterman, who's not one of the higher rated quarterbacks in this class, but he's not going to make a lot of mistakes. He's a guy you could bring in and have as your backup and groom for the future with some amount of upside, and would handle the system well. You can say similar things about other quarterbacks around the league. Davis Webb out of California, he played a pro-style system, and in theory is relatively well adjusted. Maybe doesn't have the upside of other guys. I thought Deshaun Watson threw the ball really, really well at the combine. Mitch Trubisky, I guess, continues to be the supposed top quarterback in the class. The point is, the Steelers could draft one of them, and there's a lot more than that. And that guy would then become the quarterback in waiting for the Pittsburgh Steelers post Ben Roethlisberger. Would make for an interesting dynamic, for sure. For my own purposes as a reporter, I hope it happens this year. Kelvin Nicholas Colbert, or Colbert, we'll never know, unless he tells me, says he likes Deshaun Watson. I do too. I think these notions about him not being able to throw the ball well or necessarily run a pro-style offense the latter is rooted in some truth in that Clemson does things a little bit differently, but throws the ball really well. He looked every bit as good as Mitch Trubisky did throwing the ball at the combine in Indianapolis. He's quite capable. There's not much evidence to the contrary. I do know he had a lot of interceptions, but he was throwing the ball and being asked to do a lot, almost disproportionately to most of the top college quarterbacks in the country last year. So, I like Deshaun Watson too. I don't know if he'll make it to 30th overall, but if he does, I think it'd be hard for the Steelers to say no, though they do have more pressing needs, which is also something Mike Tomlin spoke to when he was in Arizona. I think he mentioned the cornerback, or the defensive backfield in general, was more of an area of concern overall. But also coming out of the combine was John Harbaugh, the Baltimore Ravens coach, joining myself, yourselves, and I think most other well-learned fans in sort of laughing off this this Ben Roethlisberger retirement talk, all of which stemmed from a radio appearance on his own show in which he said at the end of it, it's not like I'm not going to play next year. So the retirement talk went up and went down as far as I'm concerned as soon as it happened. But Ben Roethlisberger is masterful at playing these media games and keeping his name and concerns in the conversation. He's the quarterback of the team, so that's natural that it's not particularly hard for him to do. But guys, yeah, Ben Roethlisberger's playing next year, and John Harbaugh joined Art Rooney II, Kevin Colbert, and Mike Tomlin on the same day, and saying, "Look, the Steelers expect Ben Roethlisberger back, because of course he's coming back." And he should have been asked more follow-up questions on the radio show. It's a whole other subject we can get into sometime. But lastly, we've got another couple of comments. Watson has that it factor. Yeah, maybe. I don't have a great eye for the it factor. Frankly, this is not befitting my job description, but I could see it. I mean, he did just win a national championship.